Thank you for joining us on Silently Bleeding Hope for the Pastor's Wife. I'm your host, Jan McIntyre, and today we have a special guest with us. It's Samalee Allen. Welcome, Sam.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Sam, could you tell us just a little about you?
Yes, I am Sam, known to my friends. My first name, Samalee, comes from my mom. She got really creative. My husband and I were married 41 years ago, and we dated 3 years before that. And we've been in ministry longer together than we've been married. And we do have one son who is involved in ministry and music, and he's married to a wonderful wife who's involved in marketing, and they gave us two glorious grandsons of thunder.
Sam, I understand that you are a caregiver to your mom in your home. How did it come about for her to live in your home? And what was that like for your daily life being her permanent caregiver?
Mom lost her husband, and I asked her not to do anything major. Well, she didn't. She did all the major things. She moved twice. And the last time she moved back to our home state, which is Louisiana. And she really hadn't gotten over the grief of the loss of her husband. And basically, she started just wanting to die. She used the term, I want to close the blinds, not take my medicine, and just let nature take its course. So I talked to my husband, and we said, we need to get her here to Tennessee to be with us. What is that going to look like? So we sold this ancient farmhouse that we had, got something new that was more conducive to having another adult in the house. And that was in 2018 in the summer. 8 years, I mean, sorry, a year and a half after she moved in with us, she had eight total surgeries. And so that is how she came to be with us. We just knew it was a matter of life and death for her mental health to get with us so we could help shoulder the burden and just be in her life daily.
So, my understanding is she eventually ended up with dementia. Tell me a little about that.
After we did all of the surgeries and got her to a good, healthy level, then we started realizing, something's not right. We can't put a finger on it, but something's just not right. And she had already been through all of the med workups, where they revamped everything. She was a retired nurse, a
Mm.
retired deputy sheriff. So she was very in charge, right? And so now she's with us and still taking care of her own meds and everything. And we're headed into 2020. And I suddenly realized, because something happened with her. We couldn't figure it out. We wondered if it was a stroke or something, but we realized at that point she may have taken too many meds. So basically, she OD'd herself on what we don't know. But from that point on, I took over her meds. While she's recovering and all of this is getting out of her system, I'm just exploring every bottle that's in her space. And my husband's trying to comfort her, but she's not paying any attention to that. And so it's at that point we go see her primary, who says, when you're ready and when you think she's ready, I'm going to schedule a neurology appointment for her because I think she needs to see a neurologist because of dementia, which we discovered in time. She had three forms of dementia. She had Alzheimer's, which is what she was first diagnosed with. Then she had vascular dementia, which comes into play later on. And then the other one is frontotemporal dementia, which the actor Bruce Willis has. It affects your speech
Mm.
and language skills, and we started seeing that as well.
How long did this season last for you, and what did that require of you personally, taking care of your mom with dementia?
Well, a total of 6.5 years was when she moved in with us. to the time of her death. And so those first 4 years, 4.5-ish years, it was all getting her to this healthy spot. This is discovering what we come to discover out of her. And then it launched into the care of her. So no longer is she really able to dispense her meds or care for herself or live alone. So she is living in our home. And the last 2.5 years found me 24/7, basically, in this house, and a lot of it was in this space, this room right here. And as her health declined, the care amped up. So it required more of me, and I would have to learn things that I just didn't know. Um, you're learning how to dispense meds. What are the meds for? You're learning that you need a POA, a power of attorney, to be able to speak for her. Number one, we had to get it. Number two, we had to get her to sign it,
Oh,
which I thought was going to be a fight. And what it turned out was a blessing because she willingly signed it when I said, Mom, this is not to take your life away from you. This is to speak for you, enabling me to speak for you in the event that you can't. And she had had heart problems. So that had been the case before, and her husband spoke for her. And so she understood that. She willingly signed it. And that helped me a great deal. So I would tell anybody, if you find yourself in this situation, get a POA for business, even though they may only own a car, get a POA, power of attorney, for all medical decisions. And if you can't, then it goes into a thing called conservatorship. And that's a whole ball of wax that you just don't want to go there until you have to.
yeah. Wow. Oh, I can understand a tiny bit just because my mother took care of her mother for 8 years and she had dementia and it was so hard on my mom. So I can only imagine how difficult that had to be for you, even though you loved your mother dearly. It's hard when you have to become the mom,
Oh,
right?
yeah. Yes. We looked at it for a while. We were crying along the way just simply because little bits of mom are slowly disappearing all the time to where then she's not my mom anymore. She doesn't, she looks like my mom, but she doesn't act like my mom. And I told Terry one day, I said, I miss my old mom because I miss the interaction. And she and I always talked, and we always asked a lot of questions of each other. And I think that's part of her being a nurse as well as a deputy sheriff. And so that just played in our relationship. And I tried to continue that, but then all the gurus in dementia say, don't ever ask questions. And I was like, oh, I've got to change our way of communicating. Oh, this is going to be difficult. And then we tried it, she and I didn't tell her why, but I just quit asking her questions. And I can't even tell you, even as an example, what one is right now. But she became frustrated because it wasn't easy anymore. And I agreed with that. So after a month of listening to gurus, I decided I'm going back to us and we'll just wing it from there and see what happens. And both of us relaxed in that and were communicative as possible with her given dementia status.
Yeah. Well, don't you imagine maybe the Holy Spirit was kind of leading you as to what you needed to do?
No doubt he was leading me in every step of the way because at just the right time, when I had exhausted all my chasing of the internet rabbits, talking to all the people, trying to get knowledge, trying to get understanding, trying to know what is the next step for all the things, Medicare, Medicaid, her care, and the why of it all. I would just come to a complete stop and I would just like, Lord, I don't know what to do. This feels like a shell game. All of these things feels like a shell game and I can never choose the right shell. You're just going to have to help in some way. And always, without fail, I would get an email from somebody who knows or somebody in charge either an education process or a redirecting, which was so helpful. And I was totally aware that this was God's hand in this process, not only for mom, but also for me, because he cares for the widows as well. And I could see that just all over this our situation.
Oh, that's beautiful. Sam, you took care of your mom 2.5 years where you were basically in confinement. How did that affect you mentally, emotionally, spiritually? How did that affect you?
There was no other recourse except for what I considered forced isolation because mom didn't have what it took for resources to be able to go into a memory care. At the time we were looking, it started at 5,000 a month.
Mm,
That's a lot of money. We didn't have that per month. She didn't have that per month. And so the other option was that she go to a Medicaid facility that's local that everyone warned us against.
mm,
And because of that, Terry and I, my husband, made the decision, okay, we are going to just flesh this out right here in this house. And that means she's going to die in this house.
mm.
And we are just going to prepare ourselves for the long haul. No matter how long it takes, this is what we're going to do. So, physically, emotionally, what happens to a 24/7 caregiver is a fatigue that takes place. It's not only just a feeling of tiredness, it's the point of you being on point 24/7. Even when you're asleep, you don't go into that deep, refreshing, restorative sleep. I think they call it REM sleep
Mhm.
because you're listening. Just like probably when you had children, babies, you're listening for that. And mom was reverting back to toddler status. And so I was get both of us were getting fatigued. Um, Emotionally, I was weary from it all. And we would take time to encourage each other with the little phrase of it's a season. It's a season and seasons end. And that would just be our encouragement for each other because one day he might be up and I'd be down. He would encourage me. And then maybe the next week it would be just the opposite. And so we were trying to make sure that each other remained healthy physically because it is a wear and tear on your body because you're constantly up on point, you're not getting the rest you need, and you may not be even eating like you usually do to nourish yourself. You're just eating whatever's fast or whatever, and that fast is usually not healthy. And so anything to get mom to eat, I would go, and it might be loaded with sugar just to get her to eat. And she was dropping weight, I wasn't. And so it was funny how that worked out like that.
Ah,
But that started bringing both he and I down. And when he would leave the house to go do ministry, he would feel guilty because he left me, knowing that anytime something changed, a dynamic in the house changed, then mom was going to react with agitation of some sort.
mm,
And so he felt guilty. I felt left and alone to handle it. And then, of course, this is into the 2.5 years. Now, when he was home, I got breaks, meaning 2 hours roughly on Monday nights and Thursday nights. I got away from the house so that I could teach a class. And for him, that meant the dynamic in the house changed, which meant he had to deal with the agitation. And it
mm.
was always bizarre. Whatever it was always bizarre. And that kind of wears on you. It's frustrating after a while. And you're just too tired to deal with it sometimes. And sometimes, even when we're together, you get tired and sometimes you just get irritable and you snap at one another. And that would never be the normal recourse for you. But because of this whole situation and what was happening, those kind of weird things, unfortunate timings would happen. And you would find yourself then in regret, knowing I know what caused it. I'm sorry. A lot of apologies too.
Did you ever battle with depression?
Oh, yeah. When he left to go do ministry without me, and I couldn't do it with him like we had always done, hand in glove. I found myself in this room getting up earlier and earlier. So less sleep, less sleep. And I would come in here because I knew I had a short amount of time before she would wake up and she would shadow me. And that's just like what it says. She is shadowing right along with me throughout the day. And so I would come in here, and there were days I would just cry. I
Mm.
couldn't pray. There were days I could pray. There were days I worshiped. There, I'd just keep the lights off, turn on a candle or light a candle, and just sit in God's presence. Just let Him just settle in this room around me and just hold me in my weakness, in that I was broken in the moment because I didn't have any outside connections except for Mondays and Thursdays. And eventually those were stilted because I would have to call off a class because Terry was out of town, or there was too wild a situation, or mom was back in the hospital, or something, was going on. And so battling depression was always where I could come in this room and just say, God, help me in this moment. I pray peace over this house and over my own life because I need it today. I'm at a low point and I just am having a hard time dealing with the day. And there were other contributors in this, and that my brain got foggy, that I
Mm.
couldn't concentrate on reading a book. I would have to go back a chapter or two to catch up to where I needed to be. And so I was like, well, just push that aside. I'm just going to focus on however much of the Bible I can read. And so I tried to do, and this sounds so funny, but just one chapter a day, just to get myself settled into today, to be able to handle today. And then, just like the word says, don't worry about tomorrow. Tomorrow's got enough trouble of its own. Just deal with today. And so that's where I rested. And where I got my daily strength to pull myself out of any funk. I couldn't stay there because I had to take care of somebody.
Yeah. Wow. So this obviously was a season of silently bleeding for you where, you probably were not calling a bunch of friends and saying, "Oh, woe is me."
No, I found of myself that when I was talking to people, I was always bringing it up. And I hated that. I got to where I hated that,
Mm.
and I, like I said, I wanted my life back. So I think I was just reaching out, and just, it's the only thing I was focused on. So it's what I knew to talk about. I had nothing else to talk about. I would have the grandbabies come over, and they're young enough that a weird thing happened. Mom would get on the floor. She was super bendy, flexy, pretzely, just like them. She wasn't like physically weak where she couldn't get off the floor. She could do that. She just twisted up in her recliner and it just was super flexible. So she'd get on the floor with my grandsons and play with them. And that would give me a chance to go to the bathroom, or that would give me a chance to go start dinner. And maybe Terry would come in later. But it also gave me a sense of normalcy, that there is life in these toddlers that I don't have with just mom being in the house. Because in a way, you're thinking of the future, which is death is coming. Death is coming.
Mhm.
And so, it's a season. You just don't know how long that season is. And so I did not want to feel like I was strong. I didn't want anybody to say that, because people would say nice things like that. They go, "Oh, you are my shero," or "You are so strong. You love your mama so well." And I almost felt like it was an imposter syndrome that was going on inside of me. I never would say anything. And I felt reluctant to accept their compliments because of this emotional war that was going on inside of me, going, I don't
Mhm.
want to do this anymore. I
Yeah.
want my life back. But then I also want to honor my mom, take care of my mom, and I'm doing it. I just feel crummy doing it. So this wrestling back and forth that was going on. And so I appreciated them saying that. I just didn't feel worthy of people saying anything like that at all.
Mm. Did you ever get angry at God?
Oh, yeah. It was a good frustration that I felt for God because I felt like he wasn't answering me. I felt like, and when you say that, it makes it sound terrible because it makes it sound like I want my mother to die. I want my mother to die and end my pain, end my suffering.
Mm,
And unless a person has been involved in this 24/7 care
yeah.
where it's all you, and a lot of people, they don't have the husband or the spouse or anybody else coming to check or to help with. And so it is all on them. Thankfully, I had Terry to help shoulder this burden. And eventually, we did have hospice come in. So my frustration level initially with God was make this end. And then
Mm.
I would feel guilty about, oh, what that really means is I want my mother dead, and then I'm like, I don't want that. So this was this wrestling match that I felt like I was putting on God. I was wrestling with God and angry with God. And one morning I was sitting right here and I loved watching. For some reason, it just gave me such peace. Every morning I would watch the sunrise right over there. It would slowly come up to beautiful purples and oranges and salmons and pinks almost every morning. Some days it was cloudy, but it would come up and I was whining. I started in on my whining with God, my whiny, and and I knew I was whining. It was just one of those mornings. And I know that I know, not audibly, but I heard the voice of God saying, what if he was giving me a question? And things are better caught than taught sometimes. And he said, what if your confinement is really your assignment?
Wow.
Well, well, in my language in this house, I felt like my granny had been slapped. And what that means in Southern language is I was gobsmacked by that question from God. I never thought of it as an assignment.
Wow. Mm.
I knew what the word said about honor your mother and father, and your days will be long upon the earth. I know it says that, but in my mind, that means just being a great child when they live somewhere else. And so what happens is then I go, okay, I'm going to have to reframe this because that was from God. I've got to reframe this whole situation. And so I begin to reframe it as a holy work of honoring my mom in the taking care of my mom.
Mm.
I didn't get it right every day. It wasn't perfect. God didn't call me to perfection. He called me to follow him and be willing to pursue the next, live in obedience. And so, with that question and that reframing, I swallowed down all my whiny behavior and I began to look at it a different way. When I change my mother's diaper, I'm honoring my mother. And my mother didn't follow the Lord. And so
Mm.
that was an added bonus bringing her into this home. And she wanted to, but while she was out doing her own life, she would make decisions that clearly were not godly. And so living in our home, we were able to have her just be part of our rhythm, going to church, being in prayer, doing our devotions, watching television that was godly television, to feed into our spirits. And so she became part of that. And in hospice, in her last few months, she would say, oh, Terry, pray for me. And
Mm.
so she probably forgot, but something was in her because she, as a child, had been in church, but went away from it. And so she would ask Terry to pray with her just about every night. And so when he would tuck her in, basically, he would pray with her. And then sometimes he would lead her in a song, and then she would follow him. It's funny how the mind works in that she would remember music and songs. Even though she didn't play anymore, she played a couple of instruments. She would just sing along with him, and that she could remember those words. Only one time did she ever not recognize me. But in the next few moments, she recognized me. She remembered me for the most part, all through that, including she remembered Terry. And she loved Terry. That was great. Is when she dealt with her own daughter that we would have a little bit of friction there, I can do that, and I go, yes, I know you can, that kind of thing. But if Terry suggested something, no problem, I'll do that for you, Terry. That was a win. So we took our wins where we could daily.
Yeah, that's good. So, Sam, looking back, what do you see that God was forming in you during that season?
Right off the bat, endurance. There was patience, obviously, um, and a dependence on leaning back on God for answers, for just the will to keep doing it. And so if you go to Romans chapter 5, uh, there's a great, I think it's 5 verses that are just power packed, one, two, threes for a Christian's life. And it starts off by saying that we've been justified by faith, da 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 da. So I put it in my own language. It says, by faith we receive grace through Jesus Christ. But then it goes on to say that we also receive peace, which is important when you're going to be a 24/7 caregiver. You need that peace to settle on you daily and nightly. And so then it goes on to say that we have gained access by faith into the grace where we stand. Not only do we boast in the hope of glory of God, but also, again, I'm translating here, we also glory in our sufferings. Now, here in the modern Western world, we're not being drug out of our homes and tortured. But what we do experience are hardships, distress of all kinds. We experience adversity, difficult circumstances, a situation like what I found myself in. So then I jump into this, and glorying in our sufferings, that just didn't make sense to me prior to going into this season. And in this glorying in our seasons, it says not to manipulate or garner attention for sympathy. Now, some do, but that was not what I knew as a Christ follower I needed to do biblically. Biblically, I glory in my suffering so that I can pray for wisdom and understanding, and that I gain perspective. And God knows I value perspective, and will offer it dearly to my husband. He may not want it, but I give him perspective. And so then we go on into that. It's so that we thrive in our sufferings because of God doing this. We gain perseverance or the endurance. And what that is staying steadfast. We keep on in the keeping on. And then the scripture goes on to say, the perseverance leads to character. And the character is doing the right thing because it's the right thing when nobody else sees or knows. And then the word leads us to the next scripture, which says, character then leads to hope.
Mm.
Hope is a dangerous thing, especially in a believer's life, because hope is the seed to faith. Hope is our vision, it's our goggles that allows us to see the future. Hope says you've got a season that will have an end. What you going to do with it now, and what are you preparing for? So I took this on as a training time. And so in that, I knew that, okay, I'm taking the best care and honoring my mother in the best way that we can, reframing it to also honor God because he gives me a hope about a future that's ahead. And ministry is going to be even sweeter when I can do it with my husband again. And by that time,
Amen.
maturity has happened, not only in my life, but in my spiritual life too, where I know God's got me, he's had me, we're moving forward because he's going to have me again.
Amen. Sounds like you learned a lot.
I did. There were hard won lessons too.
Sam, what would you say to that pastor's wife that's watching right now and she feels trapped in a season of confinement that she didn't choose, or maybe even just a season that's really difficult that she didn't choose? What would you say? Just look in the camera and just speak to her a word of encouragement, please.
Sister, You've heard me say it. It's a season and seasons end. It's okay not to be okay as long as you don't stay there. Lean back on God. Feel his strength infuse you with the strength that you need just for today. And then don't let the enemy shame you into believing you're not worthy of this affection from God, this strength from God, because he wants to silence you. He doesn't want you to talk to God, but the Lord wants to infuse you with his strength that you can make it today and the next day. Just lean back on him.
Amen. I so appreciate you being so raw and honest because that people are going to relate. They get it. And I I've not told you this before. My mother ended up with dementia, and we had prepared to bring her into our home after my father passed, but she passed 5 days after him. So she ended up never coming here. But I do appreciate so much you sharing so openly. So let's leave on a high note. Tell us
Okay.
quickly, what are you and Terry doing in ministry today?
Terry and I started a ministry, nonprofit 501(c)(3) called MVP Leader Group, and it stands for Most Valuable Player. Some people have laughed saying it's Most Valuable Preacher. Well, yeah, maybe so. And so what we do is we have three core values: honor, encourage, and connect. And we tangibly create ways to keep pastors, their spouses, ministry leaders, their spouses, evangelists, missionaries, their spouses. And recently, in the past 2 years, actually, it's been the Christ follower, business leader, and entrepreneur. But we tangibly look for creative ways to keep them in the game of their calling, keep them in the game of their marriage, because so many marriages break up because they cannot handle the stress of life that ministry has on that marriage. And then also to keep them in the game of their life. We've heard too many stories of preachers who off themselves, they kill themselves.
Yeah.
And Jerry and I think if we could get to them, or if some of our own MVPs could get to them and show them, plant that seed of hope that gives them a future, right? That is connected colleague to colleague, preacher to preacher, friend to friend, to make sure you don't fall into the crack. You don't isolate because somebody's pulling you out. That's what MVP Leader Group does.
Oh, I love that. Do you guys have a website?
Yep. MVPleadergroup.com.
Okay, and I'll put that down below. Sweet woman of God, thank you so much for joining us today. If you are walking through a difficult season, I'm going to leave our email down below. And if you'll email me, I promise I'll email you back and I will be praying for you. And I'll do this as quickly as I possibly can. Know that you are seen, you are heard, and you are loved. God bless, my friends. Thank you for watching Silently Bleeding, Finding Hope for the Pastor's Wife. I look forward to connecting with you. Feel free to leave me comments down below and make sure and subscribe. If you want to know every time a new video is coming out, hit the bell. I would be so delighted if you would also hit the like button, and feel free to share this video with anyone you know that this would encourage. Blessings, my friends.